The Chicago skyline shimmered like scattered diamonds against the ink-black sky as the black limousine glided silently along Michigan Avenue. Inside, seated behind tinted glass, was Haruto Nakamura, 53 years old, worth an estimated $4 billion, founder of Nakamura Tech Industries, a man who had built semiconductor empires from the ground floor of a modest workshop in Osaka. He was the kind of man whose name made stock markets twitch when he sneezed. But tonight, Haruto was not a billionaire. Tonight, he was simply a tired, hungry man in a city he had never visited before, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal kimono-cut suit, carrying the quiet dignity of someone who had worked too hard for too long and had earned every gray hair on his temples. His assistant, Kenji, had been rushed to the hospital that very afternoon, a sudden appendicitis attack that had completely dismantled their travel arrangements. Every plan, every translation, every buffer between Haruto and the English-speaking world had been wheeled away on a hospital gurney. Haruto had considered ordering room service, but the hotel concierge through a series of enthusiastic gestures and a brochure thrust forward like a peace offering had directed him toward the hotel's signature restaurant on the 32nd floor. Elara at the Pinnacle. That was what the brochure said, in gold lettering. Haruto had nodded politely and decided to go. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful true stories alive. The elevator opened to a world of warm amber lighting, the gentle sound of a live jazz pianist, and the intoxicating aroma of truffle butter and roasted rosemary. The restaurant was exquisite, white linen tablecloths, crystal glasses that caught the light like prisms, and floor-to-ceiling windows that gave the entire city of Chicago away like a gift. A host in a slim black suit approached immediately, tablet in hand, a practiced smile fixed on his face. Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? Haruto looked at him steadily and said, in Japanese, Yoyaku wa shite aramasen ga, hitori de shikuji ga shitai no desu. I do not have a reservation, but I would like to dine alone. The host blinked. His smile flickered but held. I'm sorry, sir, do you speak English? Haruto tilted his head slightly. He understood the tone, it was the tone of a question but the words themselves were a closed door. He said, calmly and clearly, Ego wa Hannes Mason. I do not speak English. A brief, uncomfortable pause settled between them like a fog. Okay, the host turned and beckoned a nearby colleague, a tall man named Derek, who jogged over with the confidence of someone who believed enthusiasm could substitute for skill. Hey there. Welcome to Elara. Table for one? Derek said, slowly and loudly, as though volume was a translation device. Haruto blinked patiently. He pointed to himself, held up one finger, and then gestured toward the dining room. Yes. Yes, one. Absolutely. Derek said, nodding vigorously. Right this way. Good. That part worked. Haruto was seated at a beautiful window table, the best in the house, actually, because even without words, a man in a $4,000 suit near a window table communicates something universal. He sat down, folded his hands, and looked out at Chicago, its bridges, its river lit green, its towers glowing proud against the night. For a moment, he felt the loneliness that wealth cannot cure. Maz, the assigned waiter for the section, arrived with menus and water, setting them down with professional flair. Good evening, sir. My name is Maz, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink? Haruto opened the menu. It was in English. Only English. He studied the words as though trying to decipher an ancient script. He recognized waijiu, which was a Japanese word that had traveled, and sake in the beverages section. He pointed to the sake. Oh, sake, great choice, sir. We have a lovely Junmai Daijinjo. Maz paused, watching Haruto's face remain completely still. Okay, I'll bring you our best one. He disappeared and returned with a small ceramic flask and a cup, which was correct, and Haruto nodded with quiet appreciation. Then Maz pulled out his notepad. Are you ready to order food, sir? Haruto looked at the menu again. He pointed to what he assumed was a fish dish, he saw the word salmon and felt safe, and then pointed to another item that had the word mushroom near it. Salmon? Okay. And the mushroom risotto? Great. Maz wrote it down. Any allergies? Anything you can't eat? Haruto did not understand the question. He smiled politely. Mars tried again. Allergies? Like he mimed something, scratching his arm, puffing out his cheeks, which looked, to Haruto, like a man describing a weather pattern. Haruto smiled again, this time with slight concern. Mars gave up and walked away, whispering to Derek, I think he's allergic to something, but I have no idea what. Just bring the food, Derek whispered back. He pointed at it. For the next 20 minutes, a quiet comedy of errors unfolded around Haruto Nakamura's table. A busbar brought him bread. Haruto, wanting butter, held up the bread and looked around helplessly. The busbar rushed away and returned with olive oil. Haruto accepted it graciously. Then the salmon arrived, and it was beautiful, but it had been prepared with a citrus glaze, and Haruto, looking at it, tried to communicate that he would have preferred it without the sauce. He made a gentle wiping gesture over the plate. Mars stared at him. You want me to clean the plate? Haruto tried again, pointing at the glaze and shaking his head lightly, not in anger, simply in polite suggestion. Oh, too much sauce? Should I take it back? Haruto did not know what take it back meant in that gesture context, so he said nothing. Mars took the hesitation as a yes, picked up the plate, and walked away. Now Haruto had no food. He sat quietly, hands folded, expression unreadable, the practiced composure of a man who had survived boardroom battles, hostile acquisitions, and the Tokyo Stock Exchange on its worst days. He could survive a missing plate of salmon. But he was very, very hungry. It was at this precise moment that Jennifer May walked onto the floor. She was 28, originally from a small town in Ohio, and had spent 3 years teaching English in Kyoto after college. She had not planned to fall in love with Japan, but Japan, as it tends to do with open-hearted people, had simply absorbed her. She had learned the language not in a classroom but in rice paddies, at late-night ramen counters, in neighborhood festivals where she was always the tallest person and always the most welcomed. She had come back to Chicago only 6 months ago, taking the restaurant job while figuring out her next chapter. Tonight she was covering the windows section because Mars had a family emergency and had slipped out early. She approached Haruto's table, saw the empty space where a plate should have been, saw the sake cup, saw the menu sitting closed, and read the entire situation in about 4 seconds with the quiet intelligence of someone who had learned to observe before speaking. She looked at him. He looked at her, the same careful, tired look he'd been giving everyone all evening, the look that said, I am trying, but I am alone in this. And then Jennifer May opened her mouth and said, in clear, warm, perfectly accented Japanese, Nakamura-sama, taihen maushiwake gozaimasen. Nani ke okateshimata yudesu ni watashi garo tetsudai shimasu. Mr. Nakamura, I am terribly sorry. It seems something went wrong. I am here to help. The effect was instantaneous and total. Haruto's composed face, the mask he had worn through airports and elevators and bread and olive oil misunderstandings, simply dissolved. His eyes widened. Then, slowly, like a man who has been walking through a dark house and has finally found the light switch, he smiled. A full, genuine, relieved smile that made him look 20 years younger. He replied in Japanese, his voice carrying something between relief and disbelief. You speak Japanese? Here? In Chicago. In a past life, I lived in Kyoto, Jennifer said, pulling out her notepad with a small bow. Now, let's start from the beginning. What would you like to eat tonight? What followed was one of the most remarkable dinner services the staff of Elara at the Pinnacle had ever witnessed, not because anything dramatic happened, but because of the transformation it produced. Jennifer took his full order properly, toro tuna if they had it, or fresh salmon without sauce, a light mushroom broth, steamed rice if the kitchen could manage it, and another flask of sake, the drier variety. She communicated with the kitchen on his behalf, and the kitchen, rising to the occasion, produced a meal that was not quite Japanese but was respectful of it. As the food arrived, Haruto ate slowly and with satisfaction. Between courses, he and Jennifer spoke, not constantly, not intrusively, but in the natural rhythm of two people who share an unlikely common language. He told her briefly that his assistant was in the hospital. She expressed genuine concern. He asked what had brought her to Japan. She told him about Kyoto, about the temples in autumn, about a kind elderly woman named Tanaka-san who had taught her how to make proper miso soup and also how to say I'm lost in 7 regional dialects. Haruto laughed, a real laugh. Tanaka-san sounds like she was a very wise woman, he said. She was, Jennifer agreed. She told me the most important word in any language is the one that makes someone feel seen. He looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded, slowly, the way a man nods when something true has been said. By the time dessert arrived, a green tea panna cotta that Jennifer had quietly requested from the pastry chef as a small personal touch, Haruto had been at the table for nearly 2 hours. The restaurant had thinned out. The jazz pianist was playing something slow and blue. When the bill came, Haruto paid it without looking at the amount. But before he stood to leave, he reached into the inner pocket of his suit and produced a small, white business card, the kind that said very little but meant a great deal. He placed it on the table and slid it toward Jennifer with both hands, in the formal Japanese manner of gift-giving. She received it with both hands, as she had learned to do. "If you ever find yourself in Osaka," he said in Japanese, "and you want to see what a man can build when someone finally understands him, come visit." Jennifer looked at the card. Then she looked at him. "I'll remember that," she said. He bowed slightly. She bowed in return. He walked toward the elevator, steady and unhurried, the way a man walks when he has been fed, not just with food, but with something warmer. Derek and Mars and the host watched the whole departure in silence. "What just happened?" Mars said finally. Derek shook his head. "I have no idea. But I think Jennifer just changed that man's whole night." Jennifer set the business card down on the hostess stand and began clearing the table, folding the linen, stacking the crystal, returning the room to its waiting stillness. She picked up the card one more time. Nakamura Haruto. Nakamura Tech Industries. She placed it carefully in the pocket of her apron. Outside, 32 floors below, a black limousine pulled quietly away from the curb and disappeared into the bright, indifferent river of Chicago lights. Some doors are locked not by will, but by language. And sometimes, the only key needed is a single human being willing to meet you exactly where you are.